To summarize briefly, section 1 dealt with waking up in the morning. Section 2, washing hands, how we wash our hands, the ritual washing of our hands in the morning and when the bracha is made. We spoke about how would you get stressed in section number 4, in section number 3. In section number 4, we gave the Torah's guidelines and guidance as to how a Jew uses the washroom and the beautiful bracha that follows of Asher Yatzar, where we express Hashem's wonders in the body that he made. And we are now up to section 5, which is a clean environment. So the section basically speaks about how if we want to mention a blessing or daven or learn or do anything holy, then we need to make sure that the environment is both clean from any excrement as well as from any nakedness. And that's really what this section deals with. So let's start by looking at the first section inside of the Kitzur. It's here on the screen. And then we will move across the slideshow as we go along. And the Kitzur begins. It is written, you shall cover your excrement because Hashem, your God, walks in the midst of your camp. Your camp shall be holy, and there should not be seen in you any unclean thing or naked thing. That's the verse. From here, our sages of blessed, it's in the Chumash, from here our sages of blessed memory infer that wherever Hashem, our God, walks with us, now Hashem is everywhere. So we mean wherever Hashem is felt, wherever he's more present, meaning when we are engaged in sacred matters such as reciting the Shema, as davening, studying Torah, or the like, the place must be holy. So if you're about to begin a shir, you're about to daven, make a bracha, you want to make sure that the environment around you is appropriate for the holiness that you are about to express. Therefore, no uncommon excrement should be found there, nor any nakedness be visible in the presence of the person reciting the Shema. That was section number 1. In fact, even to think of something sacred in a place where there's dirt or bad smell is forbidden unless it is covered. As it is said, you shall cover yourself. Okay, now it goes down into some more of the details, and now I'm going to focus more on, I'll go through a little bit of it outside, and then we'll take another look at it again inside. So we've said that even thinking Torah is also a mitzvah, and therefore that should also be said in a state of holiness. In section number 3, he mentions that certainly the person making the blessing needs to be clean, meaning that he should make sure that his body is clean of any filth of the nature that we have spoken about. That's very important. In section number 4, he speaks about how the environment needs to be clean, meaning before you start davening, you want to check that there isn't, I guess, a dirty diaper lying around the room. I was going to say in the 21st century, generally, we can assume that the place is clean. I guess, hopefully, even if you have little kids. But if there is concern that it's not, then one should first survey the environment before one begins to daven. Now, number 5 is, again, more relevant. He says a child, once he's able to eat proper food, meaning like wheats or oats, within a certain time frame, then it's problematic to daven if he has a dirty diaper. So this is, I guess, quite relevant for anybody that has small children. You may have been ready to bench by a Shabbos meal with the table filled with lots of guests, and you're about to bench, and then you say, oh no, and you realize that one of your children needs a diaper. At that point, it is actually forbidden to go ahead and bench until one first makes sure that one's child is cleaned. If it's a very small child, then perhaps one can get away with it, but better not. That was as far as diapers. Okay, so one wants to make sure once again that the environment is clean. So he says that even if there isn't a bad smell. If there's human excrement, that's problematic. As far as animals are concerned, he says most animals, aside from a cat or others, it doesn't smell bad. If so, that's not a problem. But anything that is smelly, or if it's a corpse, or even if it's food that smells really bad, one has to remove it from one's vicinity before one begins to daven. That's as far as dogs and spoiled. In section 8, okay, so how far must one be from that source of filth? So one certainly shouldn't see it in front of oneself. And even if it's next to or behind oneself, one should be at a distance of 4 amas, which is approximately 2 meters away. And in section a little later, he discusses, same goes if a person needs to release gas from their body, then one would have to stop davening. In fact, anybody that's in that person's vicinity that is aware of this has to stop davening until the environment is clean. So if you're in a packed Rosh Hashanah shul of 600 people, then you may need a pause at certain points during your davening. But as far as learning is concerned, unless you're the source of the problem, one does not need to interrupt one's learning. That is as far as distancing. Okay. Now, what about a bathroom? So even if a bathroom is perfectly clean, since it's a bathroom by definition, one wouldn't be allowed to daven in that space. So this could be relevant, let's say, if you're in a hotel and you're there with another person and you want to give them their own space. So it still would not be acceptable to daven in the bathroom. I guess that's quite something that makes a lot of sense to most of us, hopefully. But in section 13, he speaks about what about kiddies' toilets. Now, he actually doesn't speak about kiddie potties. He says, what happens if there's a vessel that's being used? And I was trying to think of the modern significance, and then I thought of what a child uses when they're very small before they can get onto a regular toilet. So he says, if it's of a material that cannot properly be cleaned, then again, one would not be able to daven in its vicinity. But if it's made out of materials that it can be perfectly clean, then there is no issue with davening with such an item around. Okay, and the next point, which is kind of an independent point, is that one needs to be careful not to say Hashem's name in the bathhouse or in a place, a bathroom or a place of nakedness. One doesn't think words of holiness and certainly shouldn't mention one of Hashem's names. Let's take a look at that inside. Section 14, I'm scrolling down to it. In a bathhouse, it is also forbidden to speak or think about sacred matters. It is also forbidden to mention the specific names of the Holy One, blessed be He, even in a secular language. For example, Gott in German, or in any other language. In a bathhouse or in a filthy alley, similarly, it is forbidden to extend shalom to your friend there, because shalom is the name of the Holy One, blessed be He, as it says, and he called it Hashem Shalom. Regarding a person whose name is Shalom, some authorities forbid calling him by his name in the above-mentioned places. Others forbid it, since the intent is not the concept of peace, but merely to mention the name of that particular person. And our practice is to be lenient. However, a God-fearing person should preferably adopt the stricter view. So this kind of concludes the first section of this section, which is not davening in a place of filth. And now we move on to nakedness. But it's also forbidden to daven in a place of nakedness. Now, nakedness can sound like somewhat of a relative word. And the truth is, even in Torah, it will depend. Is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it a man with a man with a woman? And the Shulchan Aruch outlines it as follows. As far as a man is concerned, the nakedness refers primarily to below the waist, meaning that area needs to be covered if a person is going to say any words of holiness, to daven, to make a bracha. Right? Let's say you're going swimming, you're on the beach, and you want to have eat something, and you want to make a bracha. So as long as a man is wearing a bathing suit, that wouldn't be a problem. As far as women are concerned, so woman with woman is not a problem at all. as long as she covers her nakedness, which she naturally does. But men, in the place of women, say any part of the body of woman's body that's usually covered is already considered a distraction to a man when he davens, and therefore a person should not daven in the presence of a woman that is any more undressed than she usually would be, meaning any part of the body that's usually covered. Certainly in religious circles, that would include also a woman's hair if she is married. In secular circles,
hold on 1 second.
So there are more lenient views about that. And the final point is that if a person is wearing a robe, so although his body is covered, he needs to have a belt or some kind of separation between his upper body and his lower body to make a distinction. And that takes us to the end of section 5. Before we continue, perhaps I could give you a moment for questions. Are there any?
No.
Okay, we'll continue then. So we now move on to section 6, blessings and Hashem's name. So we've gone quite a long way. We've woken up, we've washed our hands, we've gotten dressed, we've used the washroom, we've made sure that the environment is clean, and now we're ready to go ahead and make that bracha. So these are some things to bear in mind when making a bracha. Now, in case you're feeling like you're an amateur with all of these practices, over here you'll discover this is an area that even those that may label themselves as frum or super frum or whatever description, it's an area where everybody can strengthen themselves in. So this is an area which is basically fighting habit, which is making a bracha in the appropriate way. So let's look at the text a little bit inside, and we'll see as we go along. Okay. Before reciting a bracha, you must be sure which bracha you are required to recite, so that when you mention Hashem's name, which is the principal part of the bracha, you will know how to conclude the bracha, meaning all brachas start the same. So you might say, okay, I'm not quite sure what bracha this food is. Do I say hamotzi or do I say baruch pri hagafen? Start saying the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and then you say, nu, and ask the person how to finish the bracha, and that way you end the bracha right. But the Shulchan Aruch says that doesn't work. Why? Because the most powerful part of the bracha is when you mention Hashem's name. Why is that? To understand why that is, we've got to stop for a moment and talk about what is a bracha. So bracha means to bless. Now, what does the word bless mean? Anybody? So you might say it's to praise Hashem, but if it's praise, there's another word for praise. So what's bless? So Chassidus explains that a bracha, a blessing, is to draw down Hashem into this world. It's like the terminology, hamavrich es hagefen. If somebody pushes a vineyard into the ground to make it grow back up from another place. So when we make a bracha, what we're doing is we're bringing Hashem's brachas, we're bringing Hashem's presence into this world. That's what we're doing. So the most powerful part of the bracha is actually when we say Hashem's name. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, meaning Hashem, I'm bringing you into my life, I'm making you more present. Since the primary part of the bracha is Hashem's name, therefore it's appropriate that at that point we should already know which bracha we're making. So rather than starting the bracha with the generic and then later figuring out which bracha to make, from the outset we should have in mind which bracha we are making. It is forbidden to do anything else while making a bracha. Okay, so if you're busy multitasking, sending a WhatsApp, but at the same time making a blessing so you can take a bite out of that apple, that's problematic. Don't recite the bracha hurriedly, but think of the meaning of the words. The Sefer Hasidim writes as follows. When you wash your hands or recite the bracha on fruit or on the performance of a mitzvah, brachas which everybody knows, You should direct your attention to recite them in the name of your Creator, whose goodness is bountiful, who granted you the fruits of bread for your pleasure. Think that you're talking to Hashem, who gave you this bread, or commanded you to perform the mitzvah. You should not recite the bracha automatically out of habit, spouting words from your mouth without thinking of their meaning. And I must say, I have room for improvement. That was me speaking. On account of such practice, Hashem's anger was kindled, and he sent us word through the prophet Isaiah, saying, because the people approach me only with their mouths and honor me only with their lips, and their heart is distant from me, and the reverence for me is merely perfunctory, the Holy One, blessed is he, said to Isaiah, see how the deeds of my children are merely external, and they adhere to them only as a person adheres to and practices a custom of his forebears. They enter my house and pray to me, the designated prayers merely as a custom of their fathers, but not with their whole hearts. Now, people often ask, what about people that come to shul and, doesn't look like they're thinking about a word that they're saying? So I always say they're so much better than not coming to shul, and you should be admired for that. But certainly he's saying that when we are making a bracha, when we are davening, we should put our hearts where our mouth is. They wash their hands and recite the bracha over the washing, and then break bread and recite Hamotzi. They drink and recite the bracha out of habit. When they recite the brachas, they have no real intention of praising me. Therefore his anger was fierce, and he swore by his great name to destroy the wisdom of their sages who know him and still praise him perfunctorily without sincerity. As it is written thereafter, therefore I shall do yet more, and the wisdom of their sages will be lost. Therefore our sages warned us regarding this and said, fulfill your obligations for the sake of the Creator. This concludes the Sefer Chasidim's remarks. It is proper to accustom yourself to recite the brachas aloud, because the voice arouses concentration. So just to take a look at the handout, this is all how to make a bracha. So one of the points to remember, know which bracha you're making from the start. Say it slowly. Think about the meaning of the bracha. And if you say it loudly, so you can hear yourself making the bracha, it is going to help you concentrate. So we have a few more points left to the section about making brachas. I see that this PowerPoint actually needs to be updated, but it is now 5:20. Hope you've enjoyed and wishing you a wonderful week.